we have our muscle fibers, but do they just contract by themselves? No, they actually have what we call motor neurons. So the thing is that both neurons and muscle cells are excitable, but the neurons are like the brain. So I like to think of it as like a motor unit is like the team. So the motor neuron is the brains, and the muscle cell itself is the brawn. So every muscle cell has some motor neuron connecting to it and telling it whether to contract or not. Now, is it a 1-to-1 ratio, like one neuron and one muscle fiber? Not necessarily. In this example here, we have 3 motor neurons, but say this like blue motor neuron is connecting to and controlling what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 muscle fibers. So you can have multiple muscle fibers controlled by a single motor neuron. So all the muscle fibers controlled by one motor neuron, this is what we call a motor unit. And this is what happens with the muscle cell. So, okay, what we have here is a part of a neuron we call the axon terminal, and this thing we call an action potential. So we're actually going to cover that more in Unit 3, but just for now, know that action potentials are electrical activity in the cell due to the movement of ions. That's all I want you to know at this point. So this electrical activity causes a sequence of events that causes the release of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. That causes contraction somehow. I know that sounds like a lot, right? But what's happening with those action potentials and this electrical activity? It's some sort of ion movement, and remember that ions by themselves can't cross a plasma membrane because they have that charge, at least a charge of plus or minus 1. And in terms of the calcium, it's like +2, and so basically they have a full ionic charge, and because they have an ionic charge, they have a hard time crossing this hydrophobic core of a plasma membrane. So what happens during action potential is that these things called ion channels open, and when they open, these allow the movement of ions. So again, this is an example of facilitated diffusion, and it moves from high concentrations to low concentrations. So this is one thing you should definitely keep in mind as we go from muscle cells and even onto neurons. And next semester when we talk about the heart and all these other, especially the heart, ion channels, these allow ions to move, and this is the basis of an action potential. And which way do they move? Again, they move from my general rule of thumb. Things move from, in physiology, they tend to move from high to low. And in this case, they move from high concentrations to low concentrations. So if you open on a sodium ion channel, it's going to go from a high concentration to a low concentration in here. If you open up a potassium channel, it's going to go from the high concentration inside the cell to the outside. Chloride, higher on the outside, so if you open up a chloride channel, it's going to go into the cell. And something missing from this diagram, I think it's also in the OpenStax biology, is calcium. You actually have more calcium on the outside of a cell at rest, and then if you open a calcium channel, then the calcium is going to flow into a cell.